that it's been very hard for people to take feedback because we aren't ready to change. I'm going to say that. Sometimes we are scared to take feedback because we are not willing to put the work in. Welcome to the Confident Podcast. I am Lisa Tarkington, your guide to mastering confidence and leadership. As a business and leadership coach, keynote speaker, and a visionary behind Lead, I am here to equip you with the confidence, clarity, and strategy to create game-changing results so that you can step into your power as the person you're meant to be. If you press play today, it's because you're ready for something bigger. We're going to have real and raw conversations that will help you redefine your leadership and reclaim your confidence. This isn't just another podcast, it's your journey that we're on together. So buckle up and let's dive into this transformation. Your next level awaits. Hey, everybody. Welcome back for another episode of the Confident Podcast. I am your host, Lisa Tarkington, and we are going to have a fun conversation today. Well, it's fun for me. So I'm hoping that you guys learn so much. We're going to be talking about how feedback is a two-way street. But before I do that, sometimes I just love to start off these podcasts giving you guys kind of an update on where my life has taken me. And I'm going to point out something which you probably won't even notice as an audience, but we, last episode that we had, I was a little tired. So my son was going through a sleep regression. Work was like at a whole nother level with things, and I just wasn't sleeping really well. And so today it was really fun to walk into the podcast studio with a different type of energy, kind of feeling like more myself, if that makes sense. Those weeks where you're just like, I'm just trying to get by. That's how I felt last time. And I'm so glad that we talked about the books, and I'm so glad that I was able to give those recommendations. But I'm also really glad to have a little bit more bright-eyed type of lifestyle coming into today. But what I want to start by sharing is I talk a lot about the clients that I have. I talk a lot about my coaching. I talk a lot about my executive coaching, my business, my leadership coaching. And I just want to give kudos out to all of my clients right now who have been with me for some brand new, some a few years, some have been with me for 5 years. It's been so phenomenal to see their growth. And I think that that's one of the coolest things that happens as a coach is you get to watch people really want to make changes in their life, whether that's within their current business, like they're the leader, maybe they're within a business and becoming the next level. And maybe it's just life things where they're trying to figure out things differently. It's been really cool for people to say here are my goals. Here are some changes that I want to make, and then allowing me to be part of that process to really make an impact and see them grow. I think the other cool thing kind of segues into the feedback piece is these people are holding themselves accountable for their actions, for what they need to do differently. And I think that that's really beautiful because they're not blaming other people. And if they are, we're working through that. But for those that aren't, they're saying, okay, here's my accountability. Here's my ownership. Here are the things that I want to change in order for a future that's better than what I have right now. And I think that that's the coolest part of my job is seeing people go from you know what, I'm not really sure to holy cow, I am exceeding all my expectations. I'm growing in these goals. I'm doing the work because as a coach, I'm not doing it for them. I'm holding them accountable. I'm coaching them through the process. I'm having them think differently. I'm part of their giving different perspectives. I also use a lot of the knowledge that I have with being a serial entrepreneur, being someone who has worked in corporates, small businesses, nonprofits, consulting. I've done a lot of different things, and I'm also a visionary. So I see why a visionary is important. I also see why an integrator is important, but how we need all of the different pieces. And so fascinating. So I just want to give them all kudos because I know a lot of them listen to this podcast. And so I think it's important for them to know, I see their potential and also and see what they're doing and I see their growth. But also if you're thinking about coaching and you've been on the fence, I'm going to give you something that has been very, very important in my journey is I was that person that signed up for all the free things, okay? If you met me 12 years ago, I was oh, free event, I'll go to this. I followed all my favorite people, but I never, ever spent a dime because I was trying to well, I don't want to spend my money there. But then I was so burnt out that I was spending money on the dumbest things. And I'm just going to be honest. I remember the one year my dad said to me, you have so many clothes. And I still do. But I would say one of the differences now versus then is I would go shopping on the weekends or after work because my brain was so in such a bad place that I would just need something mindless and I would spend a lot of money on clothes. And so what I've learned is how do I invest in myself so that I can get out of those spaces and how do I grow to the next level? Because what I want is never to have the ceiling coming on my head, but I want to have a ceiling that's higher that I'm willing to reach for. And that means I've had to make shifts and changes in my career to be able to do those things. And that's why I find it so important. And so if you have been on the fence, I just want you to know, like, coaching changed my life. I have a coach. I also think that me being a coach has been so phenomenal and I love seeing people's growth. So have to share all of that because that's so important when it comes to my clients. So congratulations to those who have been part of this journey. And if you're considering it, please reach out for a free consultation. I'd love to support you. I also have to share, we just recently had Halloween. It's my first Halloween that I've ever been able to have with a kid. I always go with my friends with their kids, but my son dressed up as Batman, little cutie. He is the happiest baby in the whole wide world. My son is a little bit over 5 months right now. I don't talk about him too much on this podcast because, again, I like to keep things private. But you know what's so fun is watching his face light up, watching him dress up. And while he doesn't get to go to the doors and knock for candy and say trick or treat and all of that, it was just really fun to just start out this new chapter of my life, new traditions, knowing that that's going to be something that I get to look forward to every year with him. So that's really cool. And lastly, I wanted to share, I think I haven't really shared a lot about this, and maybe one day I'll do an episode on it, but I'm not really sure at this point, is that I have experienced a different level of postpartum than maybe some people even realize. So after I had my son in May, I didn't really have too much postpartum or what I thought would be postpartum, but it was when I went back to work full time is when it really started to hit me. I will share with all of you that the last couple of months have been extremely hard for me. There have been many things that have made it hard. People have taken advantage of my postpartum. I've learned very quickly who's in my corner. I've even lost my voice a few times. I remember one incident in particular. I remember calling my parents and really was shaken up and really was crying about it. And my dad said to me, "Lisa, this isn't like you. You always have had a voice. You've always stood up and been confident." And I said, "Yeah, Dad, I just am silent right now." Makes me a little emotional even thinking about that because I remember exactly where I was sitting in my home when I was having this conversation with him. I remember how the light was outside and I just couldn't get my voice. I just felt very silent these last couple of months. And it's really hard to see what was taken advantage of during that time. But it also was very beautiful to see who rose to support me and be next to me. And also very much so knowing that, okay, this is what I'm going through. How do I support myself to get out of it? And it's been really, really powerful to see when I put things in place, when I did some certain things in my life, I feel more myself now. I feel more confident Lisa. We teach the Confident podcast. So it's been cool to see that growth in myself. But please know that maybe it's not postpartum that you're going through, but maybe something else where you just feel very silent, froze, unsure of things. It can feel a little for a moment, but I promise you, if you start to have that self-awareness of what's going on, don't forget what happened during those moments. Don't forget who didn't show up for you and who did, and remember who did show up for you, but also notice how you reacted and responded. And I was just recently talking to my mom about all of this, the other day, and she said to me, you probably learned so much that while, we want to have kids in the future, you'll probably go through postpartum again. I think you've realized how to handle things a little bit differently. And point blank, it might be a little bit different even at that time for me, but I think it's always a learning and a lesson. And so I'm really happy to share that like I'm better than what I was. I feel more confident. I feel more even like bright-eyed and ready to rock the world and be Lisa again. But yeah, it was a really hard time for me. So please know, like we all go through hard times and we still show up to be our best selves. And it's okay that maybe you had a moment of being frozen, but I promise you that there is a light. So just wanted to share all of that because I'm a person behind the scenes, teaching all the skills and traits, and I love everything that we do here. And I'm going through all the things too in my life, and I'm very, very blessed, and I know that, and I just want to make an impact on people. So thank you guys for being part of this journey with me. So let's get into it. Let's get into today's topic, which is about feedback and how feedback is a two-way street. And I'll be real and honest with you guys. For the last probably 15 years of my life or more, feedback has been a continuous relationship that I've had to grow in. So when I've chosen the different routes that I have with my career and personal opinions as a personal life as well, and I'm going to focus a little bit on the business side here for a second. So I started out my career working at different internships, corporate. I started a blog. I was running a business, and I started a nonprofit, built more in my entrepreneur life. I have done many different facets of work, and sometimes people have a lot of opinions of what you should be doing. Sometimes it's facts. I actually love the facts piece. I love when people can give me like, hey, here's some feedback on how you could do this differently because I didn't know any better. But I think what people don't realize is that some days, as a business owner specifically, you get feedback constantly. You have employees who want to give you feedback. You have clients who want to give you feedback. You have everybody in the middle giving you feedback on how you should do things, what their opinion is, people sharing things or not sharing things. It's honestly been very muddy over the last couple of years where I think people have shared more of their opinions that aren't helpful than ever before. So today what I really want to do is really help you as listeners become better at giving feedback, but also taking feedback as well. And I really, really want you to understand that you can't just dish out feedback if you're not willing to take feedback yourself. I'm going to say that one more time because that's what this podcast is going to be about, is like, if you're going to give feedback, how do you have to be open to taking it? And if you're not willing to take it, like you can't keep giving the feedback. And also you have to understand the difference between giving your opinion, sharing different things you've heard, starting up drama versus giving really great feedback. I will share, I have stayed silent for many moments in my career because it was an opinion. It wasn't helpful feedback. And I think back to people who have given me feedback and I'm like, that is not helpful. Actually, that made me stay up late at night questioning my worth more than anything because it was not helpful. And so today what I want to do is really help you do that. But first we have to talk about why feedback is really hard to take, okay? So I'll never forget the first time that I got a performance review in my corporate career. And honestly, that leader, if I could go back and give her a hug, I would tell her that was probably one of the best reviews that I've ever gotten because she was very facts versus feelings. Take us 9 years later, where I was with another leader in the same company, and I'll never forget that feedback session. I remember it so perfectly because it was all feelings. It was all opinion. It was not factual. And the other thing is it wasn't always helpful. There were things that were on that performance review where I was like, well, why wasn't that brought up beforehand? Or, okay, does that matter? Or is that just something that like you have an opinion on? And so I think that feedback is very interesting and very important. I think that we all have a right to receive the feedback. I think it's the only way that we can grow. But it is also hard to take because many times we feel feedback is an identity thing, right? Versus it's not always just about performance. So there's not always black and white when it comes to feedback because we have an identity with what we do many times, which is a whole nother podcast I'll do one day. But a lot of pain points that people feel when it comes to feedback is they take it personal. I mean, we all have an ego. We all have the fear of not being good enough. Maybe you're getting feedback in a moment where you feel completely blindsided or caught off guard by someone giving it to you. Like someone could just come into your office or call you and start giving you feedback and you're not prepared for it. Maybe you don't trust the person giving it, right? Maybe you don't even respect that person enough that that person's giving you the feedback. And lastly, if you get it from someone, are they even taking feedback from you? Like, are they people that keep dishing it out but can't take it as well? And well, that's what I've noticed a lot with people with feedback. Or I've also seen firsthand how people just want to take feedback when it works for them. They'll ask for feedback, and then when it doesn't, something that they don't agree with, they're just like, okay. And then they don't take it because they truly just wanted to see if you'd agree with them. So I do see that a lot with the work that I do as well. But one of the things that I love to remind people when it comes to feedback is that it isn't a verdict, it's a mirror. So feedback doesn't declare who you are, but it's meant to show you something, okay? And so a lot of times, sometimes we give feedback to people because we're the ones that are struggling with something and we see it in someone. But many times also we don't want to take that feedback because guess what? We have to look into the mirror. And sometimes if we refuse to see what's in front of us, we can never change, right? And so that has been very hard for people to take feedback because we aren't ready to change. I'm going to say that. Sometimes we are scared to take feedback because we are not willing to put the work in. But we're willing to dish it out because we want everybody else to change. And so that's where the two-way street really has to come into play. And so it is important to understand that it is hard for everybody to take feedback, right? It is very hard to digest. Everybody processes it differently, but it is a game changer when you start to realize like, hey, my ego needs to go out the door. Feedback is really important, but how do I filter that and how do I make the changes? But again, I'm going to keep talking about this two-way street because I'm very, very big on you cannot continue to give feedback if you're not willing to take it as well. And so that is going to be probably what we're going to talk about the most today. So I've noticed it so many times where people, want to give it, but they don't want to take it. And there are people that love to give feedback. Maybe you're one of them that's listening that loves to give feedback. They love to talk about what other people could be doing differently. Maybe their bosses, their leaders, their team. But when it comes to receiving feedback, I'm going to just put a wall right in front of my face. They put a wall up. They get defensive. They don't want to hear it. They might just get really quiet. They might shut down. Their arms might cross and they're just listening. Their voices might get louder when they want to be defensive with what you're saying. Or also, they might roll their eyes. They might tell you, thank you for the feedback. And maybe it's even something that you're saying this needs to change. And they're taking the feedback, saying that they get it, and they're doing nothing with it. That is very important to see. But the truth is that's not leadership. Also, when you're doing that stuff and you're getting defensive or you're willing to give feedback, but you're not taking it, many times it can also be a projection because these people are not willing to look in the mirror. And it is very important to know that if you are that person, okay? And it is okay if you are that person right now. I'm going to tell you it is okay. There are many times where I was that person, but it did not do me well. Frankly, it did not help with relationships. And that's really important to me is that I have really strong relationships where people can come to me for things. And these are people, I'm going to be completely honest, that are really hard to coach. They're the people that say that they're great at coaching, that say that they're taking in everything, but they're not. And these are also people who I've struggled with to work with my whole life. These are people that I caution a lot to work with because they're not willing to see and have that self-awareness that they need to make a change. Now, what I love most though, when it comes to working with people is saying hey, I'm not really good at taking feedback. Here's the things that I currently do. I know that I'm not doing a two-way street. Help me. And then they're willing to actually put the work in, even though it's so hard sometimes. So again, that's just something to think about when we're going through this. But we spend so much of our energy pointing out what everybody else needs to fix. it's often a sign that we're avoiding looking at ourselves in the mirror. I hear the quote a lot of like, if you're doing so much work on self-improvement on yourself, you don't have time to judge other people. And I think about that a lot, right? Like, how do we make sure that we're focusing on our growth in our business and our lane and what we need to work on, that like all the blinders are on of like, hey, I'm not showing up. I'm not doing these things. And so what I think it's very easy to do is critique someone else, critique their behavior. But we need to start to reframe that, to ask ourselves, what part of this is that what I need to own? Where's my responsibility in all of this? And I've had people give me feedback, like I shared before, that wasn't feedback at all. It was opinions wrapped in judgment. It was saying like, hey, I don't mean to share this with you, but these are things that I've heard. Again, filtering that before they're giving that feedback, because if it is not helpful and if it is not true and it is not anything, they are not helping the thing. What they're doing is giving their opinion, giving someone else's opinion, saying that like, hey, I don't mean to pick at these things, but you are, right? You are. And instead it's about saying like, hey, here's a solution that I have. Or, hey, I've noticed that you're really good at this, like, but I'm going to give some feedback on an area that you're not. And that's okay that you're not really great there. But I think we expect everybody to be perfect at everything. And we are always like, well, I'm better at them than this, like the people that are giving feedback. And that's not helpful, right? I'm going to tell you something right now. The more that you pick at people and give unhelpful feedback without giving solutions and pointing out their strengths and balancing it, it doesn't build trust. Frankly, those are the people that I have like really gotten quiet around, because I don't feel comfortable being me, because all they're going to do is pick at everything I've done wrong. They're going to keep asking me to change things. And honestly, it's ruined a lot of relationships for me. And it's not because I can't take feedback. Trust me, as an entrepreneur, you take feedback on a daily basis. But I have found massive respect for people who is a two-way street feedback. I have an amazing friend who does this great job where I actually call her for direct feedback, because she will do it in a way that like reminds me like, okay, I need to own my stuff and I need to make some changes. And I have because of the way that she handles it. So on the flip side, like I just said, like I have a blunt friend, the one that's like so direct, but it's because she doesn't continue to sandwich things, right? She's just honest. She doesn't nitpick at everything I can't do right. Cause I mean, there's a lot I can't do right. But she also challenges me to be better. And also that's just really important, because I've noticed that I've surrounded myself, like my closest friends are the ones that are super direct with me. They're like, Lisa, here's some changes, right? And then I can say back to them, so-and-so, like, here's some things that and we just have honest conversations, but we also take it and we do something about it, right? Like that's the other important thing. So when you're trying to share something with someone, you're trying to be honest, be kind, be helpful. Many times, sometimes people on the other side get defensive. They have justifications, or they feel like it's a personal attack. And it's not fun anymore, because now what you're trying to do before you even have the conversation is you're trying to filter, how do I give good feedback to someone without them getting defensive? And so if you're the person that justifies it, feels like it's a personal attack, gets defensive, I highly suggest working on your feedback. Okay. And it's okay. It's not like, I'm not trying to like point out all of people's mistakes, but it's really important that we understand that feedback is really important. Taking feedback is important, and then showing how we've changed it. Because what I've heard from some people is like, I really love that this person took my feedback and did something about it. But my question for someone would be is, how are you then doing that? Because I've seen a lot of people be able to dish it out, and then because they want to see changes, but then they're not willing to do that themselves. And it's hard to create healthy feedback when people who talk the loudest about accountability do not live it out. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. It is really hard to create healthy feedback when people who talk the loudest about we need to be accountable, we need to follow through, all of these things are not living it themselves. And so let's talk about what this could look like for people when you think about two-way feedback, okay? So I've shared a lot. I'm obviously very vocal about this because I have just found such a passion for helping people with conflict resolution, confrontation, and then feedback. And so what this can look like is focusing on solutions, not just opinions. If your feedback doesn't come with next steps or growth, it is not helpful. It is just noise, okay? And it has to be actual solutions, right? So I think I've struggled with people in the past because they pick at everything that I wasn't good at. And I will be completely honest, guys, I'm a visionary. I have a lot of ideas, a lot of things, and it comes a lot with harsh feedback. And I'll never forget someone really, really challenging all of the things that I have built. And what they wanted to do was strip away everything that I was. And I lost my voice with that person. I lost my trust with that person and my relationship with that person because there were no solutions. It was feedback that this needs to change or will never grow. And I just remember thinking back to that moment, that wasn't a solution. There was no facts behind it of like, it was someone's opinion. We're saying, hey, Lisa, here's the trends that I'm seeing. If we keep doing this, this is what's going to happen. We won't be able to do X, Y, Z, right? I've also seen people that don't come with solutions. They'll just be like, well, if I was that person, I'd be changing it this way. And they are complaining about it versus going to the person being like, hey, can we work on this together, right? I've also seen people where they don't really realize that when they're getting feedback, like the fact that someone's going out of their way to actually give them factual, great feedback to help them become a better leader, they completely shut down and they don't realize that feedback is a gift. And like any gift, it loses value if you only want to give it and never receive it, right? And I think that we have to remind ourselves when that comes to how do we become better leaders. And when I use the word leader, I am talking about anybody, no matter what level that you are. Again, you can't just critique. You have to reflect. You have to think about how this shows up differently for individuals. So if you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, you know that I love AG1. I start my mornings off with it every day. But one of the cool things that I've added into my routine is adding AGZ to the end of my day. And it's been a game changer. It's a nightly drink that helps me wind down and rest without any melatonin. I love mixing it with warm water. It's calming. And sometimes I do it when I'm reading a book at night or just chilling, hanging with my husband. It's packed with things like magatin, magnesium, and saffron ingredients backed by research to help your body relax and support real quality sleep. And the best part is I wake up rested and not groggy, which is so key for me, especially with my busy days. So again, if you are ready to take the next step to help you with stress and focus more and really get some good rest, as you guys know that's really important to me too when it comes to my self-care, go to drinkag1.com/theconfident to get a free frother with your first purchase of AGZ. Again, that's drinkag1.com/theconfident. I would love for all of you to check it out. It has been a huge piece of my life. As you know, AG1 in the morning is important to me, but now I get to end my nights with it as well. I once asked someone to kind of give you guys an example of feedback of what are some of the things that I'm doing that might be holding you back. This is something that I do a lot with my coaching clients and ask and have them work with their people on. But I'll never forget listening to someone share with me like this conversation that they had with someone where they said like, I asked someone like, what am I doing to like maybe get in your way? Because they wanted feedback to get better. And they asked it and the person like gave them some hard feedback, which, they asked for. But then that person on the other side just sat there and wasn't like, well, what's something that I need to work on, right? They weren't even willing to reflect either. They just wanted to dish it out. So this is going to be the reflection moment for you guys of what I want you to think about when it comes to feedback. And I want you to ask yourself, am I creating space for feedback to flow both ways? Do people feel safe being honest with me? And that one I really want you to reflect on, because people can sit here and say, yes, but then what are you doing with that feedback? Do I respond with curiosity or do I get defensive? How do I implement the feedback that's given to me? And how have I done it in the last 6 months? Because I'm pretty sure we've all received feedback in the last 6 months. And am I the one who is only taking it one way? Have I been silencing other people as well? So this is the real test for you. It's not, always about like, well, yeah, I give great feedback, but it's about, do you really give good feedback? And then do you really take that feedback? Because what I want you to do is really understand, how are you showing up when it comes to this area? Like I said earlier, feedback is a gift, and I stand behind that. So here are some ways to really take feedback. Pause before you defend. Ask clarifying questions. Ask what the follow-through that someone wants when they give the feedback. Look for how we can have patterns but not perfection. When we're giving feedback or taking feedback, try to find out what the data is behind it, because sometimes feedback can get messy. And really think about like how, and reflect on your own journey about maybe you've gotten feedback that really stung, but then think about how that helped you grow. I think one of the most beautiful things that I've seen with people is that you don't have to be perfect, but it's about how you take the feedback and what you do with it. Because when people take the feedback that I give them and I see changes, first being like, yeah, I didn't really like the way that you did it, so I just did my own. Or they've asked for my feedback and I've given it, and it's my zone of genius, not theirs. And they're like, and then they do it their own way, and then it doesn't go as planned. And if they would have just listened, right? We all have those moments as well. I mean, people have to learn, but I think it's really powerful is like, if you ask for someone's opinion for feedback and then you don't take it or you don't follow up with them, like, why would they keep sharing things with you? Now we're going to talk about this next section, because I find this really important, is how feedback is kind of like how it helps build trust. So I would say feedback is like hard to give, hard to get. We've talked about all of those things, but I think that what we really have to do is think about like how we provide feedback, how that builds different like setups and relationships with people. So I think it's really important when people like give feedback, how they're following through with it or giving more details with something, because there is a difference between feedback and your opinion. There is a difference there, right? And so it's really important that we understand how to give real feedback and then how that trust and accountability is. And it requires intentionality. I've seen a lot of hot-headed individuals just come at full force when they're upset and give full feedback. And then they leave the other person on the line feeling pretty crappy, right? They might apologize later, but they never learned from it, and then they do it again. And if that's you, again, look into the mirror and ask yourself those questions. But what we really need to do is help people feel safe, okay? We need people to feel safe. And I know the word safe is used a lot, but in psychological safety, in company safety, but it's really about how we show up as leaders. So if someone doesn't feel safe when you're giving feedback to them, they're probably going to shut down right away, or maybe you're going to shut down. Maybe you need to change it to, can I share something with you? I have some feedback on this. Do you have a moment to hear it, right? How do we make sure before we even give the feedback that it's factual, that it's things that they need to grow in, versus it's just, well, this is what I'm hearing. These are people's opinions. Vet that stuff before you go to that person. And also focus on the impact, not just the blame, okay? So instead of saying, you always miss deadlines, try when deadlines slip, it creates extra pressure on the team and affects our clients. When you don't follow through, this is how the client feels. Feedback should be very clear about the behavior and the impact, not an attack on character, okay? So we have to think about phrases that removes judgment and replaces it with awareness. You have to show the ripple effect of how it affects the business, how it affects your team, how it affects your clients when you're giving that feedback. And then solution-based. And then how are you going to hold people accountable for those changes? Make it actionable. Again, more when you are very vague with your feedback. Again, difference between a feedback and an opinion. Feedback is to help someone grow. Opinion of like, well, I didn't like the way that you did it is not helpful, right? That is your opinion. You need to be very clear. So maybe it's one way to improve how we're doing X is to do, midweek check-in so we can catch the obstacles earlier. Instead of calling or emailing all of these clients, why don't you give them a call? I have found this to work better, right? Like, how are you giving people actionable things that really helps them? How are you, giving them the path to move forward and not just frustration? And then how are you having that person that's getting feedback and you have the two-way street follow up and accountability? So how are we holding people accountable? It's not just about giving feedback and then disappearing. It's about circling back like, hey, how's this going? But I think one of the most beautiful things that I love is when people that I've given feedback to come back to me and say like, hey, I know it's been a month since you've given me that feedback. Here is how I've changed things and made movements moving forward. And I think what I also want to point out here, which I really want to say is I really don't want you to choose who you do that with. It needs to be around the table. I have some people that I've coached and worked with where they're like, well, I've gone back to that person and said, see how I've fixed this. But then when they didn't want to fix something else in their life, they don't go back to that other person that gave them feedback. And you have to treat everybody very similar. Because at the end of the day, we need to build trust amongst people. We need to make sure that it's a two-way street, because it is, again, about looking in the mirror and making sure, like, how are we showing up to give the best feedback, but also how are we making sure that we're taking that feedback as well. Okay, the last section that I want to talk about today is about accountability. So this word is thrown out a lot. We need to hold people accountable. What does that mean, right? What I'm going to say when it comes to accountability and ownership is I want you to put the you hat on, okay? How are you part of this? How are you owning the change? Because what separates people the most when it comes to, I would say, great employees versus good employees is that they're like, hey, I made this mistake, versus being like, well, all of these things were against me, and they play the victim mindset. It's a very big pet peeve of mine as a leader, because there is going to always be forces and things that are going to stop us and hold us behind. But how are we holding ourselves accountable? How are we making sure that there's goals that we're getting to meet? And what we have to do is not blame by pointing fingers. It is my biggest pet peeve, right? How are you looking in the mirror to hold yourself accountable? How are you not saying it's their fault? Well, these all things happen because this person did this person did this. No, accountability says, like, how would I do something differently? And honestly, it takes courage to go there. It takes courage to have that self-awareness of like, oh, I was part of that. Ownership doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. Honestly, it's saying like, hey, I made this mistake. I'm going to own up to this, because it is so much easier, again, to work with people that have that versus being like, yeah, this happened. It wasn't my fault. Well, yes, it had something to do with you. So here's something that I tell my clients all the time. And like, I just kind of already said this, but like, I would rather work with someone who has failed, who maybe missed the mark, who stumbled, who messed up, but they owned it. And then they didn't do it again, right? They made changes versus the people that are like, I'm perfect. This person does this wrong. This person does this wrong, and then doesn't take responsibility. Frankly, like, I don't want to work with those people. Those are the people that like I don't even love to give feedback to, because I completely shut down as a leader, because I don't even want to start talking to a brick wall, right? Because I also think like when you are when you fail and you move forward from it, you are going to learn so much more when you're accountable for your actions. And so when you think about building accountability for yourself within your team, within even like customers, and building that trust, it has to start with you. It's how are you showing up to show up how like feedback needs to be a two-way street? How are you showing up to have regular check-ins, to talk about the progress that you're making, the obstacles that you're overcoming, the lessons that you've learned, and not like, how are these conversations, not confrontation? How are you asking for feedback? Oh my gosh, you know what I would love is if every person I worked with is said to me like, hey, Lisa, like, do you have any feedback for me? And then followed up with this feedback. Oh, that'd be the best, right? And so how do you do that? How do you have that self-awareness? And again, accountability isn't a punishment. It's about empowerment. Like, how do we hold ourselves accountable? And I will tell you, it is so freeing when we're like, hey, I messed up on something. I need your support. Can you support me on this? Or, hey, I messed up. Like, I know that it's going to hurt us for a second, but I will never do this again. Or yes, this didn't go, I didn't meet this goal. Here's how I plan to do this moving forward. Or yes, my follow through wasn't the best on this. I'm sorry that it caused you X leader issues, but how am I going to change these things? As you can tell, I have a lot of passion around this conversation because this continues to show up for people. So out of this whole conversation, I am not asking you to be perfect. I am asking you to look in the mirror. How are you owning? How are you having ownership? How are you having accountability? And how are you giving and taking feedback? Listening to this whole conversation and like talking about it is so key for your growth. The more that you can understand, filter, give feedback, you are going to build more trust. You're going to have better relationships, and you are going to put the right people in place around you. But when you start to notice who you shut down around, who doesn't take your feedback, I can also tell you that you're going to change who you spend your time with. And so again, use feedback as your mirror. It's not a weapon. Give yourself the grace and ask yourself, how do I need to show up differently? What do I need to be doing differently when it comes to my own accountability, my own follow through, my own feedback, my own ownership? Because we all have areas that we need to work on. And I am right there with you guys on all of this. So if you can take anything away from today, I just want you to look in the mirror and decide how can you show up differently when it comes to feedback. Don't look at someone else and say, these are all the ways that they need to change. No, look at yourself and how do you need to change these things? Because the minute that we start to fix the things that we need to focus on, it will help everybody around us. So thank you guys for tuning in today. And as I always say, continue to spread love and kindness to everybody that you meet. And have a great day. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Confident Podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, head over to leadconfidently.org for today's show notes along with discounts to our services. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and follow us on Instagram and YouTube at The Confident Podcast. Your feedback means the world to me, and it helps more people discover the show. And hey, if you're feeling inspired to dive deeper, let's connect. You can find me on Instagram at Lisa Tarkington Official. Drop me a message and let's explore how I can support your journey to confidence and leadership. Remember, you have the power to choose confidence every single day. Keep showing up, keep striving, and keep believing in your potential. I'm cheering you on, and I'll see you next time.